Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Data Dialogues. I'm excited to bring you another episode packed with insights and ideas to help you make the most out of your data. For this episode, I'm joined by Ross Davis, Analytics and AI Practice Lead and Architect for IBM Lab Services in Asia Pacific. In this episode, we're talking about a POC that IBM and Certus collaborated on for a large central bank in Southeast Asia, delivering end-to-end information management all the way through to BI assets in just over a week. Hey Ross, thanks for joining today. Let's start with maybe you giving everyone a bit of an intro to yourself and a bit of your background.
No worries, Julian. Yeah, my name is Ross Davis, and I'm the lead architect for the IBM Lab Services data and AI practice in Asia Pacific.
That's great. So we obviously wanted to talk to each other today and to the audience that's listening about this recent proof of concept that was done. Can you maybe give us the background on how the proof of concept came about?
Yeah, certainly. It's quite an interesting background here. We've been dealing with this major Southeast Asian bank for a couple of years now, and on their existing Teradata platform, they're facing huge challenges in meeting regulatory guidelines because they are easily the number one bank in their country. And it's very important for them to be able to start delivering new capabilities, new features, new requirements much more quickly than they currently can. They continuously have to try and explain to their business leaders as to why it's taking 3, 4, sometimes 6 months to deliver just a single report to the business.
Right, and so they wanted to talk to IBM about a potential move from Teradata to Cloud Pak, is that right?
Yes, that's correct. Their existing platform is a fairly disorganized combination of best-of-breed technologies, some of which are 10, 15 years old, combination of Teradata, some old Informatica, a lot of SQL, ELT scripts, and it's very disjointed, very expensive to maintain. It's actually out of support largely, and is highly insecure.
All right, okay. And so the alternative for them from a platform perspective anyway is Cloud Pak from IBM. So can you maybe take us through what Cloud Pak is and why it's a bit different to offerings that have been available in the past?
Yes, thank you, Julian. And the thing about Cloud Pak is that it's actually not a combination of tools. It's actually one integrated platform. So the idea, it's built on an open source base, but it's effectively a fully containerized OpenShift cluster that operates data science, data management, metadata and general data governance functions. It operates end-to-end data lineage, glossary management, and of course the transformation of data from all the operational systems into the data warehouse, data lake target. And everything is microservices enabled, but it uses well-proven and very secure technology such as the information server cartridge, the DB2 warehouse platform, but within one integrated, built fresh from the ground up, cloud-ready platform that runs on the hybrid cloud. So it can either run locally on-prem, it can run on private cloud, or be deployed on public.
And multiple different clouds as well. It's not just the IBM cloud, as I understand it.
Yeah, that's correct. Most typically it's deployed on Amazon public cloud. It's also deployed on Azure public and private around the region, and also GCP and occasionally IBM public cloud as well.
Great. So I guess the reason that Certus got involved was because they expressed some interest in looking at Data Vault as a methodology as part of the proof of concept and looking at how that might actually help. How did that come about?
Yes, well, as part of the original problem that I was describing a couple of minutes ago, where they actually have very, very long periods in which they have to perform a very waterfall approach to ingesting new data, profiling that data, working out which elements they want to keep, which ones they want to ignore, then actually trying to take this whole process through to a highly normalized, what they call tier 2 platform, which is actually a system of record in modern style. The idea is that they want to take away a lot of that normalization, that kind of what they call gold plating they're performing in their data modeling. It's too complex, too expensive, and certainly an approach that is very, very rigid. And really the approach is about 15 years old now. And they had heard of Data Vault. And when we were talking to them about how we would use it to implement what we call a thin slice, all the way from their landing area all the way through to their analytics marts, the idea that we could then accelerate the process so that we actually could ingest new data sources within days and weeks rather than weeks and months was very exciting to them.
Yeah, that's great. So I guess to frame it up for the audience, the idea then was to test CloudPack with Data Vault to try and move away from the old world, slow, cumbersome, heavily, very expensive as well, processes, and see if Data Vault on CloudPack would actually provide that speed they were looking for. We might just jump to the chase and maybe let everyone know this actually was achieved essentially within a week. We had a day to stand up CloudPack, and then the Certus team and the IBM team got together and used the Data Vault methodology, some of the accelerators, which we'll talk about a little bit later, and we were able to deliver 2 source systems into a Data Vault model with reporting assets out the front and all the supporting governance and lineage in essentially a week. It's pretty astounding, isn't it?
It is. It certainly is. Literally, from beginning to end, it was 7 days' work to literally implement a whole area around credit card products, around the area of credit risk calculation. We effectively, with obviously the huge assistance from Certus, were able to implement a POC that was demonstrable to the client, very impressive indeed, that showed end-to-end the whole process of ingesting data from a couple of credit card and party and contractual sources within this bank, and then to start the process of exposing that data in the form of a raw vault, and to show that by adding the various control features of Data Vault 2, we're able to add a lot of resilience to the solution, but also in an automatic way, make sure that as we expose these tables, that actually all the necessary controls are in there so that we know exactly which version of the products, of the parties, of the contractual obligations that sit within this model we're working with at any point in time. So it's a highly flexible model, and one that actually was built, in that case, just in 2.5 days. And then what the Certus team did is they basically implemented the business vault over a period of another couple of days to perform the behavioral credit risk score based on a couple of hundred source attributes, and deliver that in such a form that then in the final couple of days of the POC was exposed as a analytic mart for a series of dimensional queries by the users.
Yeah, so we might talk a little bit about the process. So, I mean, most of this audience will be familiar with Data Vault, but I guess maybe from a consistency point of view, we'll give a very brief explanation. So Data Vault is a methodology for information management that brings together a modeling technique as well as an architecture and a set of processes. It's very standards-based and template-driven. And so the key thing that we had here was obviously a way to implement and follow those standards and use some templates that Certus has developed for the IBM platform to get through this POC. So I guess if we talk about day one being standing up CloudPack, that was something that the IBM team did for us. That seems like a pretty simple task now.
Yes, it is. Being fully containerized from the get-go, from this version of CloudPack onwards, effectively everything is fully containerized in a series of OpenShift pods, and the whole deployment process from beginning to end took about 3.5 hours. And this included the full DB2 warehouse platform, the full end-to-end data management and governance stack within the information server cartridge, and of course included the Certus asset for automatically generating the lineage and the management of the DV models. So obviously the links, the satellites, and the hubs are all generated automatically within that construct.
It's amazing. It's such a difference from a few years ago when we were installing all the components individually and setting aside weeks to get the base platform sort of set up and installed. So I know that the team used the IBM modeling tool and a tool called Fast Track, which is a source to target mapping. So in the first day or two, really, to actually design the data model, the raw vault model, and map, at least map the first source. I think that they did it sequentially and essentially created the model, the initial model off source number one, did that mapping, and then generated the load code or the ETL for that first source. That was really kind of day one and day two together. And then day three was actually adjusting the model and bringing in the second source. So we're making the adjustments to the model to accommodate whatever additional attributes were available in that second source. Rerunning that mapping and generating additional ETL to load that source. So really, after a couple of days, we had almost a complete raw vault. Is that how you understand it?
Yeah, it is. It's a fairly complete area of credit card and credit risk analysis associated with what we call revolving credit retail banking. And just to give you an idea, to build that whole area from scratch, using the existing techniques that this major Asian bank was using, it would have taken them approximately, according to their CTO, approximately 13 weeks end to end, because of the highly prescriptive process they have to follow and the extremely complex set of data models that they're adhering to in the old world of FSLDM.
Certainly helps make the business case, doesn't it, when you're talking 13 weeks to just a couple of days. I mean, obviously we were using subsets of data, so extrapolating that out to full production, would still be additional time. But when you're using automation, volume actually sort of takes a back seat and is not that major priority.
Yeah, that's right. And can I also add one other thing as well that we haven't really discussed much yet, but it was really important to our client, and it was the fact that they wanted to see lineage all the way from the sources, both of the sources, all the way through to the target dimensional models. Now, previously, any attempt to do this would have to be manually constructed using Excel spreadsheets or even reverse engineering ELT code directly from the SQL and explaining it to auditors from the financial regulator. The idea here is that all the lineage from all the source landing files through the source areas in the raw vault and through to the business vault and finally to the dimensional models are fully traced through thanks to the fast track mappings being captured and then of course being carried all the way through IGC Watson knowledge catalog, so that then as this code is generated, all the lineage is stitched up from the left hand side, the source, all the way through to the right to the dimensional view.
Yeah, I know that was critical when the team was developing the template assets for code generation, which sits on the data stage platform, we should mention. So, or the data stage components within CloudPack, really, to be accurate. But it was a big focus to make sure that source to target lineage was available for auditing and for reconciliation, and with especially this customers in the financial sector. But lots of the customers that use Data Vault are in that financial sector, and being able to audit and reconcile and meet the requirements of those regulators is extremely important.
Yeah, this is it. I mean, BCBS 239 is ripping through the whole of Asia Pacific right now, and Southeast Asia is an example of an area that was only maybe a month or two behind Australia in their commencement on that journey. And in some banks in Australia, banks in New Zealand with BS11, obviously around most of Asia Pacific with BCBS 239, they're having to construct nearly 230 critical data elements or CDEs, which is effectively KPIs in the dimensional layer, trace them back to many, many thousands of source elements within a host of different product, customer, and account and finance systems. Now, that entire process, if using advanced reverse engineering technologies, for example, like Watson Knowledge Catalog, is all well and good. But to actually go and actually perform that reverse engineering means tracing through code, store procedures, looking at complex macros, BTEC, all sorts of conditional and relational logic. It's can't be fully automated. It just doesn't work that way. Some of these transformation jobs these days in banks across Asia Pacific and Australia is another example of us seeing this same change. They're actually writing their ETL using modules of Python. Now, the reality is you cannot reverse engineer that kind of module reliably. And this is why what we have with this approach using the Certis assets is very much carrying it forward, so that as these mappings have been captured in fast track, they're propagated automatically in complete granular detail through to the dimensional model, all transforms ultimate detail without the need to reverse engineer and fix it up afterwards.
Much better to build it and design it from the ground up with that there than try and reverse engineer for sure. Now, we've mentioned business fault a couple of times, and we should probably dive into that. I know that there was a credit risk business rule to create a business fault or a set of business fault tables. So might quickly just talk about that process in data vault terms. Raw vault and business fault are both part of the same model, but business fault is the result or the output of a business rule being calculated. So it's information that's being created rather than information that exists in a source. So in this case, we were taking some credit card data from two different sources, customer data and product data, and then running it through a credit scoring or credit risk model, and the outputs of that get loaded as a business fault table. And that happened in just a day. What would that usually look like in a Teradata world, for instance?
Yes, look, typically in that world where they're very much attached to the FSLDM, the idea that a logical model and physical model are incredibly similar and everything has to be broken down to third or even fourth normal form, that process usually takes about 3.5 to 4 weeks, simply because of all the levels of transformation to decompose it, map it, and then reconstruct that view back into then what later downstream is called tier 3. Very complex process, often involving manually crafting ELT processes. Yeah.
And so in this case, they're sourcing data from raw vault, they're running it through the rule, and then it's actually getting loaded by those same templates that load into the raw vault initially. So you're getting all that metadata capture that we're just talking about, again, for all the business vault tables. So you're getting that auditability on your the information that you're creating within your warehouse, as well as the information you're bringing into your warehouse. Certainly helps from a regulatory perspective. So I think really we're up to probably day 5 of the process now. The last day was creating an information mart, which I think most people would understand. Dimensional marts, star schemas, and the like. And in the data vault world, we create something similar. And in this case, it was quite easy. We were selecting some data from raw vault tables, some data from the business vault tables that were created, and we just created a dimensional view for the BI tools to get pointed at. So very quickly, within the space of a week, the customer had an example of credit scoring reports.
That's right. And if I just can briefly interrupt you there, Julian, I just wanted to add that because we were using DB2 Warehouse, which is effectively a columnar store database, the whole idea here is that dimensional view quite literally was implemented for the POC and has been implemented elsewhere in the world as views very often, because the performance of the columnar store of areas that are quite complex to compute can reliably be run on a view-based model. So interestingly enough, we often find we materialize them as complex business rules, but we often don't materialize the basics of for example, the dimensional structures, the outriggers, the core of the stars, or the snowflake that we're building, so that we don't actually have to waste storage. You don't have to spend a lot of time archiving and versioning materialized stores, which actually are not necessary, because a lot of these marts are used for very explicit query patterns, or ones which we can optimize for without actually storing every single component as a separate star schema. Effectively, half of the star schema is a view and remains so, even with dozens of users accessing it at the same time.
And it adds to the agility of the overall team or platform, doesn't it? I mean, you can adjust a view a lot quicker than you can recreate a physical data mart. And so, from an agility point of view, we've shown in the space of this POC to this customer that they can be agile in adding a new source in a day or two, creating business rule outcomes and business fault tables, very quickly, and then they can create views and adjust views as to meet the needs of the reporting users. And so it allows you to have reporting users involved in a project, in a sprint, very quickly, because you're talking about, you talk to them about the source data, about prototyping reports, and then just adjusting those views as you need to really brings the whole data ops conversation to life.
Yeah, it does, absolutely. And Cloud Pak for Data is absolutely a data ops platform as well. So everything is integrated. So the entire process of version controlling a model is linked to the version control of, for example, the ELT processes, which in turn is linked to the version control of the metadata and so on. So the idea that you can actually transform the warehouse in a manner that's a CI/CD pipeline integrated with GitHub is very, very core to Cloud Pak. Every project is effectively within a GitHub. So everything has this ability to make very discrete changes to one leaf within a particular release, where a branch can be very, very small and can be deployed extremely quickly in an automatic way. Now, this combined, of course, with the fact that it's all running on the OpenShift platform means that whether we're patching binaries, whether we're enhancing the model, adding new business rules, or amending existing rules, the whole idea here is that process should be seamless, and the process of regression testing, the process of rolling it out, it should be something that is basically automated and should be transparent. And interestingly enough, something that our major client here in Southeast Asia also wanted was that they could deploy changes intraday. So occasionally they actually have to make changes for the national regulator as a result of an audit, and demonstrate that change has occurred by the end of the same working day, typically a single business rule. This is a capability that they just laughed at before. They couldn't even dream of achieving this without this data vault platform and the integration with Cloud Pak that's provided by the Certis acceleration asset.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's a whole new agile world where we can respond to business needs in the time that the business needs them. It's nice to see information management teams and analytics teams being able to actually respond that quickly now. Look, what a great example of teaming up and partnering together to show some value to a customer. I really appreciate you coming on today to have a chat about it. And obviously, if anyone wants to hear more information, they can get in touch with yourself or myself at Certis and IBM, and we'd obviously be happy to take people through the presentation that was the output of this particular POC, or provide POCs or demos for them as well.
Thank you very much.